We are monitoring the possibility of several areas of the United States getting their first taste of snowfall in the coming week. And will cold air last as we make our way through the middle of November? Let's dive right into the details next here at the Weather Farm. As we can see from our satellite map, it's a very active pattern across northern Canada, but the United States, other than some rainfall that moved through the southeast over this past weekend, it is a generally quiet conditions for our Sunday into our Monday. And we look here at our 500 millibar anomaly map. This is for North America. And so we have ridges building across the United States that's really keeping our weather west to east for most of the week. But we're going to start looking up here towards Greenland. A lot of the cold air has been bottled up across parts of Canada, but we start to see a ridge building across Greenland. And as that high continues to build, what's that eventually going to do? As we get toward the weekend, that high is getting stronger, coupled with another high just north of Alaska. It's going to then dislodge a branch of the polar jet down into the lower 48. And as long as that high pressure stays in place across Greenland, that colder air and that polar air is going to be dislodged into the eastern half of the United States, while we have a ridge out to the west and we have a low pressure system with a trough out across the northern Pacific. And so that's really going to be the driver of our weather over the next 5 to 7 days. This week, very quiet, ridging from west to east, calm conditions. But we're going to start to watch the pattern change here across Greenland into Hudson Bay. And as that high pressure builds, our weather will change. And the reason we think this is going to happen, this time of the year, we start to look at Greenland for those blocking highs. We start to look at some of the Arctic oscillations and the North Atlantic oscillation. And when this Arctic oscillation goes negative, it's been very positive here, but about the 10th to the 15th, it's going to go negative. And we're going to watch it return to slightly positive. But it could fluctuate as we get closer to Thanksgiving. But we look into December and we see a sustained period of negative Arctic oscillation. That's going to mean that there's going to be a lot of cold air that's going to be dislodged into the lower 48 somewhere during the second half of November into the first part of December. Right now we are looking to see that will likely be in the eastern half of the United States, but we can even see it happening a lot earlier. And with this extended pattern, that kind of gives us indication that once we get that blocking pattern up along Greenland into Hudson Bay, it could remain there for a long time. And if that's the case, we could have prolonged bouts of colder weather in the lower 48. Here's another metric that we look at. This helps us identify when Greenland blocking highs are going to be possible. So we look at that North Atlantic oscillation. When it goes negative, that is a strong indication that we could see a blocking high somewhere up in Greenland, up around Hudson Bay. And we start to see that again going negative by the time we get to this upcoming weekend and remaining generally around zero for the next couple weeks. But then again, as we end November into December, we could see yet another round of colder weather for the eastern half of the United States, lasting into early December. So there are some signs in those longer range models that our weather pattern is going to get much colder and wintry across the eastern half of the United States for the month of November. Another metric that we look at here is our CDAS Nino 3.4 index. This has been running about -1. When we see that value at -1 or lower, that clearly identifies us in a La Nina pattern. Over the summer, it's been flirting with that -1 as we went through the autumn, but signs are that it's going to continue to be slightly at -1 or less. And if that's the case, that gives us an indication that we will be going into a La Nina pattern for this upcoming winter. And what does a La Nina winter look like here across the United States? Well, the polar jet retreats well to the north through Alaska, keeping Alaska cool and warmer than normal, but then allows that colder air to spill into the eastern half of the United States. Whereas the Pacific jet tends to come up and over into the Pacific Northwest and bring wet conditions across the northern tier and parts of Canada, as well as wetter conditions across the Ohio Valley. Parts of Texas and along the Gulf states down into Florida, you tend to be drier than normal in a typical La Nina pattern. So as we begin our Monday here, we have a little trough that's moving through the Great Lakes, bringing rain showers to that area. Those showers that were in the southeast, they're moving off the coast of the Carolinas on our Monday. And out west, we do have a little bit of snow showers across Washington State into Idaho. We go into our Tuesday, that snow showers and mixed rain showers across the Pacific Northwest remain in place. We do have an area of low pressure across northern Wyoming that is creating a little bit of that instability, but it is high pressure. And look at these height contour lines, the 500 millibar level. They're basically flowing, again, that west to east pattern. A little dip here in the northeast, a little bit cooler weather here with some snow showers across Vermont into New Hampshire, as well as across parts of northern Quebec just south and east of Hudson Bay. But it's quiet conditions for our Tuesday. So putting it all into motion, we watch those showers move off the coast. We're going to have some showers continue to move through the northeast on our Monday into Tuesday. Snow out across the Pacific Northwest. A little bit of rain showers making their way onto the California coast early on our Wednesday, but it is high pressure coast to coast as we begin the week. We'll watch another little trough move through the Great Lakes Wednesday into Thursday. In terms of our temperatures, they're seasonal this time of the year, maybe even a little above normal as we make our way to the Central Plains with highs in the 50s and 60s for the Dakotas into Nebraska, 70s and 80s across Texas. In the Pacific Northwest, you're in the 50s and 60s. As we make our way into our Tuesday, that warmth is really beginning to build. here across the Central Plains, 70s into South Dakota and Nebraska. Out across the mountains, it's 50s and 60s. We're still cool in the Northeast and the Ohio Valley with seasonal temperatures for this time of the year. And as we go into our Wednesday, with that zonal flow from west to east, those warm temperatures are moving out of the plains into the Ohio Valley. We could be touching 70 for places like Springfield, near Columbus, Ohio, and 80s down along parts of Texas into Florida, even 70s riding up the East Coast for our Wednesday. Here, looking at that jet stream, we see that trough here through the Northeast. Going to bring those showers there on our Monday. But as that ridge and that warmer air surges from west to east, it's quiet Tuesday into Wednesday. We're going to watch a little buckle here across the northern tier. That's going to provide some showers across the northern Great Lakes as we go into our Wednesday and Thursday. But again, warm conditions across the Central Plains, the Ohio Valley southeast. We watch this buckle here across the northwest Thursday into Friday. And this is going to be the leading edge. And here comes that polar branch of the jet stream right here. It's going to connect with the main jet stream and really dislodge that polar air into the eastern half of the United States as we get Friday into Saturday. We could have some severe weather here to begin our weekend through the Ohio Valley, but it's quickly going to be replaced by colder air. 15 to 20 degrees below seasonal norm is possible. That's going to provide the mechanism for us to have our first chance of some wintry weather across the eastern half of the United States. So let's put everything into motion here as we go into our Thursday. We watch an area of low pressure move out of the Rockies. That's going to help ignite some showers through the Ohio and Tennessee valleys Friday into Saturday, moving into the Northeast. And then we watch this next low, and we're going to watch an Alberta clipper move out onto our Saturday. That's going to spread snow down through Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, into Ohio Sunday into Monday. That's all going to move off to the west east coast as we watch that deep trough over the east half of the United States bring much colder than normal temperature to the eastern half of the United States. So for our Friday, our temperatures are going to be relatively warm for this time of the year by about 5 to 10 degrees from the plains through the Ohio and Tennessee Valley. That's what's going to help ignite some of those severe storms as that disturbance moves out of the plains to the east coast. As we go into our Saturday, temperatures are a little bit cooler. We have temperatures that will not reach the freezing mark across the northern tier of the United States from Minnesota into the UP of Michigan, 30s for Minneapolis, 40s through Iowa, 50s into the Northeast and the Ohio Valley. But as we go into our Sunday, that cold air really gets moving in here, and these could be early day highs where temperatures are falling across the Ohio Valley into the 30s as that snow makes its way out of the Dakotas and Iowa into places like Indianapolis, Columbus, and Springfield, Illinois. In terms of our precipitation for the upcoming week, the eastern half of the United States, if you are east of the Mississippi, generally less than an inch of rain is expected through your Saturday morning. Our heaviest concentration of precipitation is going to be across the Pacific Northwest, where we could see several inches of rain due to those atmospheric rivers that are going to continue to pelt the Pacific Northwest into British Columbia for this upcoming week. In terms of snowfall, that's also where we're going to see the greatest amount of snowfall into those mountain ranges of Washington State. But with that pattern moving west to east generally for most of this upcoming week, most of the colder air is going to stay north of the Canadian border, and as a result, most of the snowfall is going to remain north of the border for this upcoming week. As we make our way up towards Hudson Bay, areas south and east of it with that lake effect snow bands setting up here across northern Quebec, we could see anywhere from 50 to 25 cents of snow by the time we get to our Saturday. And it is this snow band that starts to set up, and if we start to see more of this occurring as we go through November, as those lobes of polar air can get dislodged from the northern regions down into the lower 48 and help give us those sustained periods of colder than normal temperature for the month of November. Looking at the Pacific Northwest, though, rainfall amounts as we make our way down into southwestern Oregon, down into northern California, quite heavy, with rainfall approaching 6 to 8 inches of rain, as well as into northwestern Washington as well. British Columbia, generally 3 to 5 inches of rain is likely. After we get through that cold period this upcoming weekend, though, temperatures are expected to be above normal for most of the central parts of the United States as we get into that second full week of November, the exception being the far northeast, where temperatures will be below normal. In terms of our precipitation, along the east coast, we're expecting to see below normal precipitation, as well as across parts of southeastern New Mexico and West Texas. Through the Ohio Valley, where we will see that initial shot of snow moving through this upcoming weekend, we will expect to see above normal precipitation, as well as out west into the Pacific Northwest, into the Intermountain West, and parts of Idaho. A good chance of seeing above normal precipitation for your second week of November. And just one check here down at the tropics, we don't expect any tropical activity over the next 7 days, and that's a good sign. And it could be, if we get through the end of this month, this could be the first year since 2015 that we've not had any landfalling hurricane in the United States. So we'll continue to monitor this. We don't see in the long range outlooks any tropical waves being formed. Our areas of concern are here in the Caribbean at this time of the year. We don't really see waves making their way across the Atlantic like we did in August and September, so we typically monitor here in the Caribbean for any tropical development during the month of November. Well, we thank you for joining us here at the Weather Farm for your Monday forecast. We hope you've enjoyed this forecast. Go ahead and drop your comments and location. What kind of weather are you seeing? Are you able to get out this week and get those last-minute chores done before we get into the depths of winter? Or are you already seeing snowfall and heavy rainfall where you're located? Let us know in the comments, and we hope you have a great day.